Because throughout the country, although we have this very abysmal situation, where in every major city and in every community where poor children are concentrated, it is almost always the case that the quality of education is very poor. So much so that there are people who just believe that it can't even be changed, that it's really hopeless. Public education is you could sooner fix global warming before you'll fix public education. And now we have a Secretary of Education who says, you know, because of these high dropout rates, we have, after 8 years of No Child Left Behind, we still have cities across the country with dropout rates of over 50%. Over 50%. Los Angeles, way over 50%. And so he says he's going to shut down failing schools. So he wants to shut down 5,000 dropout factories. Now I know the Secretary of Education. We're friends. I knew him when he was the superintendent of Chicago. I told him, I said, listen, Arnie, the problem is much worse than that. Because kids don't drop out in high school. They dropped out way before that. When you have kids coming to high school, reading at the 3rd and 4th grade level, it's not just a high school problem. You got a middle school problem. You got an elementary school problem. And if you're going to shut down failing schools, you're going to have to shut down all of Detroit, all of Baltimore, all of St. Louis, most of LA. What's your strategy here? Where are those kids going to go to school in the meantime? Well, you didn't have a good comeback for that one. But that's where we are right now. We keep thinking there are gimmicks, that there are quick fixes, that if we just do high-stakes exams, for example. So look at California. Part of your train wreck is the fact that the state decided they were going to impose these exit exams on its kids. And they keep delaying because they realize that if you raise the standards, but you don't improve the quality of education, guess what? You're going to end up with more dropouts. More kids who now are permanently unemployable because they don't even have high school diplomas. Because they did the easy thing. They said, we're going to raise standards. But the hard work is not raising standards. The hard work is improving the schools. If you don't improve the schools, but you raise the standard, all you do is set kids up for failure. And somehow they don't get that. They don't get that. Somehow they don't get it that the biggest obstacle to educating poor kids is poverty. We have a lot of good research. Hungry kids don't do that well in school. We have hungry kids in this country. We have kids who come to this country to school sick, go to school in the winter without enough coats to wear. The basic needs of many kids in this country aren't being met because over 1 in 5 children in this country are poor, legally poor. And if you're legally poor, you're really broke in this country. And our public schools are the only institution in this country that serves all those kids. Because our public schools are more accessible than any other institution. They serve the homeless, they serve the undocumented, they serve children of the parents who are incarcerated. Everybody, courts have ruled, has a right to an education in this country. Not to an equal education, but to an education. And so the disparities, the achievement gap that we keep saying we want to do something about, what is the achievement gap? The achievement gap is merely an educational manifestation of social inequality. That's what achievement gap is. And if you think you can close the gap without addressing inequality, then you don't understand the gap. We've known for the longest time that the strongest predictor for how well a child will do in school, the strongest predictor for even how well they'll do on the SAT, is family income. Family income combined with how much education their mother had. That's a pretty powerful predictor, isn't it? One of the things it suggests is that for many kids, rather than schools being the avenue to opportunity, rather than being the means to escape poverty, schools serve as means to reproduce poverty. It's pretty sad. But rather than look at what we've done to set some kids up for a life in poverty, we are quicker to blame the kids, or their parents, or their teachers, or the whole school system, than to ask, why is it that in a wealthy country we can't educate children? Why don't we ask that question? Why has it become so hard to educate children in the United States? I've spent a lot of time in the Caribbean doing work there, in countries that have far less resources than ours, where educating children is not their problem. They got other problems. Not enough jobs, an economy too dependent on tourism or bananas or sugar cane. But educating kids is not one of the problems. Not a problem in Cuba. You can educate children in Cuba. When I was at Berkeley, I used to teach a course in Barbados in the summers. That was a great course. One of the things I learned when I was down there in 1998, we were about 300 students in Barbados who signed up to take the SAT through the U.S. Embassy so they could apply to college in the United States. The average SAT score for those 300 kids was just over 1,200. That was at the time when 1,600 was the top score. And the Bayesian papers were complaining that they didn't have higher scores. I was trying to tell them, no, this is pretty good. All 300 of the kids who took the test were black, and all of them were poor. How come being poor and black is not an obstacle to achieving at high levels in Barbados? It's not because they have technology in the classrooms. Back then they didn't have that, or small class size, that wasn't the issue, or even innovative teaching methods. They still had corporal punishment. But they believed all kids can learn. In fact, they believed the only kid who didn't learn was a lazy kid. And they thought they could fix a lazy kid down there. They also had a total system of trust between parents and teachers. I felt when I was in Barbados, if a kid was not in school on a school day, they better hide. Because any adult who sees that child is going to say, why aren't you in school today? When you look at what is wrong here, what you find is a society that accepts failure. We accept the fact that certain kids will not achieve. It's kind of built into our assumptions. And sadly, the president, who I admire, who I respect, who I want to see succeed, expressed those same assumptions in his inaugural address. Because in his inaugural address, the President of the United States said that when kids drop out of school, they need to know they're dropping out on society, they're giving up on themselves, and they've got to do better. Assumption being that it's lazy kids who are dropping out of school. I had a student, like Julian, this last year, who's an assistant principal at a high school in New York. He's also a doctoral student at NYU. He said, for my course, the students required a research project that is designed to benefit a school, to help a school. So he said he wanted to do a study on truancy. He wanted to understand why kids who are chronically truant. I said, that's a great project. So the only problem is the kids you want to study, it'll be hard to find. So I hadn't thought about that. But he very carefully goes out, he does home visits, he goes and makes calls, he finds these kids, the chronically truant kids, to find out why are they coming to school, and lo and behold, you know what he finds? They're not kicking back watching TV. Some of them are working. Some of them don't have the money to get to school, the subway and bus fare. Some of them are taking care of little brothers and sisters or sick grandparents. That is, the more he starts to learn about these kids and why they're not coming to school, there's a small number who are kicking it with their friends, but most of these kids would actually like to be in school. But they've got other issues that are preventing them. We need to stop blaming kids, or their parents, or even their teachers. Because the good news is this. The good news is that there are schools out there, even schools that serve very high-need kids, that are showing us it can be done. It can be done. It's being done right now.